The Galactic Council Chamber was the most magnificent hall in the known universe. It was a place where leaders from hundreds of alien races gathered to decide the fate of entire civilizations. The walls were made of crystal that shimmered with colors, and the floor reflected light like a mirror. Every corner of the chamber spoke of power, of unity, of promises made between stars. For many years, humanity had looked at this chamber from afar. From the moment Earth had sent its first ships into space, the dream was always the same: to be recognized, to be part of something greater, to prove that mankind belonged among the stars. After decades of struggle, Earth's ambassadors finally stood at the center of that hall. They wore simple dark suits, but they carried the pride of an entire species on their shoulders. The leader of Earth's delegation, Ambassador Hale, spoke with a voice full of hope. He told the Council about humanity's journey. He spoke of the wars they had survived, the disasters they had endured, and the dreams that pushed them forward into the unknown. His words carried honesty, passion, and the belief that peace was possible. For a brief moment it seemed as if the chamber itself listened with respect, but behind the shining faces, betrayal was already in motion. When the time came for the final vote, humanity waited in silence. Every ambassador from Earth held their breath. This was the day that would shape their future. They believed they had allies among the Council. They believed that justice would prevail. But when the voices rang out, the truth cut like a blade. One after another, the alien delegates raised their hands against Earth. Their voices were cold, empty, without hesitation. No, they said. Humanity cannot be trusted. Humanity is dangerous. Humanity must be contained. At first, the humans thought it was a mistake. They looked at each other in confusion. Ambassador Hale whispered, "This cannot be real." But it was real. It was final. The Council, the very heart of galactic law, had turned against them. The words that followed were worse than death. The Council declared Earth a threat to peace. They accused mankind of violence, of greed, of chaos. Lies poured out like poison, and not one voice rose in Earth's defense. Behind those lies was something darker: fear. The alien races feared humanity's spirit, its resilience, its ability to rise from ruin. They feared what mankind could become. The sentence was swift. Earth would be isolated. Its colonies would be blockaded. Its people would be silenced. No trade, no freedom, no voice. As the chamber erupted with approval, the humans stood frozen, their faces pale. They had come seeking trust, and they had found only betrayal. Hale's hands trembled as he lowered his head. His heart ached not for himself, but for the billions waiting on Earth who still believed in hope. He whispered softly, "They have betrayed us all." When the ambassadors returned home, the news spread like fire. Across Earth, people gathered around screens, listening in disbelief. Children asked their parents why the galaxy hated them. Workers, soldiers, and dreamers stared at the skies with heavy hearts. Colonists on Mars and Titan wept as Council fleets blocked their skies, cutting off supplies and trade. The dream of unity, the dream of peace, it shattered in a single day. The Council called it containment. They said it was necessary for stability. But humanity knew the truth. It was betrayal, pure and deliberate, a knife in the back of a species that had only wanted a place among the stars. And betrayal leaves scars deeper than any wound. That night, Earth did not sleep. Anger burned in silence. Tears fell, but so did vows. The people of Earth remembered every word, every lie, every cold face in the Council chamber. They did not yet know how or when, but in their hearts, a storm had already begun to rise. The Council believed they had caged humanity. They were wrong. Because when mankind is betrayed, it does not bow, it endures, it grows, and one day, it strikes back. The betrayal of the Council did not end with words. It became iron fire and shadow. Within months, alien fleets hung above Earth like vultures waiting for a dying creature to fall. The skies that once carried dreams of exploration now carried warships with weapons pointed down at cities and oceans. The Council said their presence was for protection. But the truth was clear. It was occupation. On Earth, fear spread through every street. Families whispered about shortages, about rising prices, about the soldiers in orbit who could destroy them with a single order. Colonies on Mars and Titan, once full of ambition and wonder, now cried out for help as Council cruisers blockaded their skies. Ships carrying food and medicine were seized. Entire communities were left to starve. The worst wound was not hunger or fear, it was silence. Humanity had no voice. Every broadcast was censored. Every protest was crushed. When human leaders tried to speak, their messages were cut off before they could reach the people. Hope was stolen in plain sight. Ambassador Hale, who had once stood proud before the council, now sat in darkness in his home on Earth. His heart carried the weight of betrayal. He replayed the vote in his mind again and again, each time wishing he could change it, but no words, no speech, no plea had mattered. The decision had already been made. Humanity had been judged unworthy. Yet betrayal has a strange power. It breaks the weak, but it awakens the strong. In the silent deserts of Mars, in the hidden caverns of asteroids, in the deep oceans of Earth, secret projects began. Scientists who had lost their families, engineers who had lost their homes, soldiers who had lost their pride, all of them came together in shadow. They whispered of building ships, of creating weapons, of preparing for the day when humanity would no longer hide. They worked without sleep, driven by rage and love in equal measure. Rage for the betrayal, love for their people. The council thought they had humanity in chains, but in truth, every chain was being reforged into steel and fire. Children grew up beneath the shadow of alien warships, but instead of fear, many carried something else in their hearts, a silent promise. They would remember, they would endure, and one day they would rise. The council believed humanity's spirit had been broken, but in secret, humanity's spirit had only hardened. Admiral Kane was one of those who refused to bow. Once a respected officer, now marked as a traitor by the council, he hid deep in the asteroid belt with a small group of loyal followers. His voice was steady as he spoke to them. They think we are finished. They think betrayal has ended us. But they do not know humanity. We rise from ashes. We build in shadows. And when the time comes, we will burn brighter than any star. Those words carried through hidden channels, reaching engineers, pilots, and colonists who still dared to hope. Across the system, people who had lost everything now found something new, a reason to fight. Earth's skies remained chained. The Council's warships remained above, but deep within the void something was stirring. Factories hidden in hollow asteroids forged armor plates the size of towers. Railguns longer than skyscrapers were tested in silence. Carriers, destroyers, and battleships, ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen, were being born in secret. The Council did not see it. They were blind in their arrogance. To them, humanity was already defeated, already forgotten. But the shadows told a different story. A storm was coming. One forged in betrayal, one fueled by pain, one carried in the hearts of every man, woman, and child who still looked at the stars and whispered, "We will not be broken." And when that storm finally rose, the galaxy itself would tremble. Years passed beneath the shadow of the Council's betrayal. Humanity lived with chains around its neck, but those chains were not strong enough to kill their spirit. From the outside, it seemed as if Earth was silent, beaten and powerless. But in the dark corners of space, far away from the Council's eyes, something extraordinary was being born. It began in silence. An abandoned mining station inside a hollow asteroid was turned into a secret shipyard. Old machines were dragged from scrapyards and rebuilt. Engineers who once worked under the Council now worked in hiding, giving their skill to the cause. At first, they built small things, parts, engines, armor plating. But slowly, those pieces came together into something far greater. The first warship rose like a giant from the shadows. Its hull was black as night, built to hide among the stars. Every bolt, every plate of steel was placed with hands that trembled from exhaustion but never stopped. The workers called it hope. It was more than a ship. It was a promise. Soon others followed. Massive carriers, their hangars large enough to hold swarms of fighters, destroyers with sharp prows like blades, battleships with railguns that could punch holes through mountains. Humanity was no longer building dreams of exploration. They were building weapons of survival. The Council had declared Earth dangerous. And now Earth was making that lie into truth. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the first completed battleship. His eyes were old, heavy with years of loss, but they burned with pride as he watched the ship come alive. The engines hummed, the lights glowed, and the railguns locked into position with a deep, powerful sound. He placed a hand on the railing and whispered, "We are not broken. We are reborn." Across the shipyards, the people worked as if possessed. Families who had lost loved ones to the blockades poured their grief into steel. Scientists who had been silenced now used their knowledge to design weapons the Council could not imagine. Children grew up watching sparks from the factories, knowing that one day, those sparks would become fire in the skies. They called it the Eternal Fleet. Not because the ships were indestructible, but because the spirit behind them would never die. The Eternal Fleet was built from pain, from betrayal, from anger, but also from hope. Every person who touched the ships knew why they fought: for freedom, for justice, for survival. The first time the Eternal Fleet gathered together, it was a sight that made every human weep with pride. Dozens of ships lined the black sky, their hulls shining with the light of distant stars. Fighters flew in formation like flocks of steel birds. Carriers opened their hangars and released squadrons that danced through the void. The fleet moved as one, silent and deadly like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. News of the hidden fleet spread quietly from colony to colony. Pilots risked their lives to join. Engineers smuggled parts through dangerous routes. Even simple farmers and miners gave what little they had, believing in the cause. Humanity, once silenced, now spoke through unity. The Council remained blind. They saw humanity as weak, still chained, still hopeless. They had no idea that in the cold emptiness of space a storm was gathering strength. Every weapon was tested. Every engine was sharpened. Every soldier was trained to fight with all their heart. Humanity knew the battle to come would be terrible. They knew the galaxy would burn. But they also knew this: the Council had betrayed them once. It would never happen again. The Eternal Fleet was ready, and when it rose from the shadows, the galaxy would finally learn what happens when humanity is betrayed. The galaxy still believed humanity was silent, beaten, and powerless. Council fleets sat proudly above human colonies, their banners of control shining in the skies. Alien commanders spoke with arrogance, saying, "The humans will never rise again." They were wrong. It began near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. A Council fleet orbited there, its cruisers and frigates patrolling like jailers guarding prisoners. They laughed at the helpless colonists below, never imagining that danger was already moving toward them from the dark. The Eternal Fleet had chosen Europa as its first target. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Resolve. Around him, dozens of human warships waited in silence, hidden by the blackness of space. The tension was heavy, but Kane's voice was steady. "Today we strike. Today the galaxy learns that humanity is not broken. Today the Council feels what betrayal has created." The order was given. Engines roared to life. Human ships surged from the shadows like wolves from the forest. Railguns lit up, plasma cannons thundered, and missiles streaked across the void. The first Council cruiser exploded before it could even raise its shields. Fire bloomed in the black sky, a burning flower of metal and flame. Panic filled the enemy's ranks. Alien commanders shouted orders, but it was already too late. Humanity's fury had arrived. Fighters poured out of carriers, swarming like a storm of steel insects. They darted between enemy ships, striking engines, tearing apart defenses. The Council's proud warships, built for intimidation, crumbled under the precision of human weapons. One by one they fell, their wreckage drifting in silence. The colonists on Europa looked up at the sky and saw the impossible. The stars burned with fire, and in that fire they saw hope. For the first time in years, they cried not from despair but from joy. Humanity was fighting back. On the Council fleet's communication channels, fear spread like wildfire. Alien captains shouted in disbelief, "Human warships? They should not exist. How did they build this? They are unstoppable." The truth was clear. Humanity had endured the chains, and in silence they had forged weapons sharper than any blade. The battle lasted only hours. By the end, the Council fleet was shattered. Wreckage floated across the void, and the survivors fled in terror, sending desperate warnings through subspace. They spoke of ships darker than night, of weapons that struck like thunder, of humans who fought not for conquest but for vengeance. Admiral Kane stood on his bridge as silence fell after the storm. Around him, the Eternal Fleet stood victorious. His officers looked at him with awe, their eyes shining with the reflection of burning wrecks. Kane spoke softly, his words carried to every ship. "Remember this day. Not because we destroyed our enemy, but because we showed them who we are. Humanity will never kneel. Humanity will never be forgotten." Today is the beginning of our return. Across Earth and its colonies, the news spread like lightning. People who had lived in despair now lifted their heads. Children whispered to each other, "The humans are coming." Workers and farmers cheered. Soldiers swore new oaths. The fire of hope returned to a species that had nearly lost it. The council was shaken. For the first time in centuries, their fleets had been crushed by an enemy they thought powerless. In their chambers, alien leaders argued and panicked, trying to understand how humanity had built such a fleet in secret. But no matter what they said, one truth could not be erased. The humans were no longer victims. They were hunters, and this was only the first strike. The battle at Europa was only the beginning. News of the Council's defeat spread like fire through every human colony and every alien world. For the first time in generations, the galaxy trembled at the name of humanity. The Eternal Fleet did not wait. It moved swiftly, striking Council forces wherever they were weakest. In the asteroid belt, human destroyers ambushed convoys, blasting them into wreckage before vanishing into the dark. On Titan, carriers rained fighters onto enemy strongholds, burning the sky with trails of fire. On Ganymede, railguns thundered so loudly that the echoes shook the ground below. Every battle was a message. Every strike was a reminder. Humanity had not been silenced. They had been waiting. The Council responded with fury. They sent larger fleets, ships older and more powerful than anything seen before, but arrogance was their weakness. They believed numbers could crush spirit. They believed fear could break determination. They were wrong. Human warships fought with precision and fury. They struck where the Council was blind, retreated where the enemy was strong, and returned with twice the strength. The Eternal Fleet was not just an army. It was a storm, one that moved with purpose. Colonists who once bowed their heads now raised their fists in rebellion. Chains were broken on distant moons. Flags of the Council were torn down and burned. Every victory gave birth to new courage, and courage spread faster than fear. Admiral Kane became the voice of that courage. His speeches reached every human ear, carried through secret channels and open broadcasts alike. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. We do not fight for conquest. We fight because we were betrayed. We fight for every child who grew up under alien warships. We fight for every colony starved by the Council's lies. And we fight until the Council itself is nothing but ash. Those words burned in the hearts of his people. Soldiers marched with fire in their eyes. Pilots painted the names of lost loved ones on their ships. Engineers worked day and night, knowing each bolt and plate they forged would help bring freedom closer. The galaxy watched in awe and terror. Some alien races whispered that perhaps humanity had been right to fear, while others began to secretly admire their strength. Whispers spread in council halls. If they could rise from chains, what else are they capable of? The wrath of humanity was not only destruction, it was justice. Each time a council fleet was crushed, enslaved colonies were freed. Each time a blockade was broken, food and medicine returned to the people. Humanity fought not to enslave, but to release. This truth made their victories shine brighter than the fires of battle. Still, the council grew desperate. They tried to send envoys to negotiate, to beg for peace, but humanity remembered too well the lies of the chamber. No hand of false friendship could erase betrayal. No words could undo the chains that had scarred generations. In the capital halls of the council, fear began to replace arrogance. Reports piled high. Fleets destroyed, colonies liberated, planets slipping from control. Alien senators shouted at each other, blaming one another for the disaster. But no blame could hide the truth. The galaxy they had built was crumbling under the hammer of humanity. And still, the Eternal Fleet pressed forward. Kane's orders were relentless. Strike again. Strike harder. Do not stop until their throne is dust. From the skies of Mars to the deep orbits near Neptune, from silent asteroid belts to moons scarred by war, the wrath of humanity spread like wildfire. The galaxy could not look away. The Council had betrayed Earth. Now Earth's children answered with fire, and every star that witnessed their rise knew one truth. The storm of humanity had only just begun. The Council's capital world was the crown jewel of the galaxy. From orbit it shone like a sea of light, its continents glowing with cities that stretched for thousands of miles. Towering spires reached toward the stars, symbols of the Council's endless rule. For centuries this world had been untouchable, protected by fleets so large that no enemy dared to come close. But now, a new shadow fell over it. The Eternal Fleet had arrived. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing at the planet that had once condemned Earth. His face was calm, but inside, his heart carried the weight of every life lost under betrayal. Around him, his fleet spread out across the void, battleships, carriers, destroyers, and endless wings of fighters. They formed a wall of steel and fire, a storm ready to fall upon the Council's heart. The Council's defenses lit up. Dozens of defense platforms powered their weapons, surrounding the world like a ring of fire. Entire fleets waited in orbit, their cannons aimed outward. From the surface, cities watched in horror as the humans appeared from the dark, their ships black against the stars. The Council believed their defenses were unbreakable. They had forgotten that humanity thrived in the face of the impossible. Kane raised his hand. His voice was quiet, but every captain heard it through their comms. The day has come. Remember Europa. Remember the chains. Remember the betrayal. Today we burn the lies from the stars. And with that, the order was given. Human warships surged forward. Railguns fired with thunderous force, their shots tearing through shields and platforms alike. Plasma cannons painted the skies with fire. Missiles streaked across the void, leaving trails of light before slamming into enemy cruisers. The battle shook the heavens. The Council fleets rushed to meet them, but they were not prepared for the fury of mankind. Human fighters swarmed like angry bees, darting between enemy ships, striking engines, shredding armor. Carriers unleashed wave after wave of squadrons, each one striking with precision. Destroyers moved in packs, ripping apart cruisers that once ruled the stars. The defenders fought bravely, but fear was stronger than courage. For the first time, the Council's warriors looked into the eyes of humans and saw not victims, but predators. They had underestimated humanity, and now they paid the price. Cities on the capital world watched as the skies turned red. The sound of explosions echoed even through the atmosphere. Towers trembled as fragments of burning ships rained down from orbit. Statues of alien rulers cracked and fell, crumbling beneath the weight of fire. And then the humans landed. Dropships roared through the atmosphere, breaking past what remained of the defenses. They slammed into the ground, opening their doors to release human soldiers clad in armor forged in the shadows. These soldiers marched through the streets with unshakable purpose, their banners raised high. They entered the Council's great chamber, the same hall where humanity had once been betrayed. The room was filled with alien senators, their faces pale, their voices trembling. The air smelled of fear. Admiral Kane himself walked into the chamber. His boots echoed on the crystal floor. He looked around at the walls that had once glowed with pride and saw only lies. He remembered the moment humanity had been condemned here, the moment Earth had been silenced. Now it was the Council's turn to be silent. The senators begged for mercy. They shouted promises of peace, of forgiveness, of rebuilding what was lost. But humanity did not forget. Mercy had died the day Earth was betrayed. Kane's voice carried like a blade. You betrayed us. You starved our colonies. You caged our children. And now, the fire you lit has come home. Outside, the Eternal Fleet continued its bombardment. Entire defense towers collapsed into fire. Alien fleets were reduced to wreckage that drifted silently above their jewel of a world. The sky, once proud and bright, now burned red with the fury of mankind. The Council had thought their world was eternal, but nothing built on. Betrayal lasts forever. The fire of humanity consumed it all. The fires over the Council world did not fade quickly. For days the skies glowed with burning wreckage. The remains of fleets once thought invincible, towers of glass and crystal lay in ruins, and the proud halls of the Council echoed with silence. The Eternal Fleet stood victorious. Humanity had come to the heart of the betrayers, and they had torn it apart with steel and fire. Inside the shattered Council chamber, Admiral Kane looked down at the broken throne. Once it had been a symbol of galactic power. Now it was nothing more than a cracked seat surrounded by ashes. The alien senators who had survived huddled in corners, their eyes filled with terror. These were the same voices that had condemned Earth, that had spoken lies to enslave an entire people. Kane spoke, his voice steady, carrying across the ruined hall. The Council is finished. Your power is gone. The galaxy will remember this day not as the day humanity fell, but as the day humanity rose. And with that, the soldiers of Earth raised their banner high in the very chamber where betrayal had once been declared. For every human watching across the stars, the message was clear. Justice had been delivered. But the Eternal Fleet did not stop with destruction alone. Once the Council's fleets were broken and their chains shattered, humanity turned to the enslaved colonies. Soldiers carried food and medicine where once only war had been. Engineers repaired broken cities. Doctors healed the wounded, not just humans but aliens too. The galaxy expected vengeance alone, but what they saw was something greater. Humanity had brought fire, yes, but within that fire was the promise of rebirth. World after world, colony after colony, once chained by the Council, now looked to humanity with new eyes. They did not see conquerors. They saw liberators. For the first time, the galaxy realized that humans fought not to rule, but to ensure that betrayal could never rule again. The story spread quickly. Survivors of the Council fleet spoke of human warships that struck like thunder. Colonists spoke of soldiers who wept while handing out food, of engineers who smiled as they rebuilt homes, of leaders who promised equality instead of chains. The words became legend. The Council betrayed Earth, and humanity's fleet brought annihilation. But there was another truth, whispered with even greater power. The humans remember. The humans endure, and when betrayed, the humans rise like fire. Admiral Kane knew the cost had been great. Many lives had been lost. Entire generations had grown up in pain and suffering before this day came. He stood alone on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. His voice was low, almost a whisper. This victory is not mine. It belongs to every child who dreamed of freedom. It belongs to every family that never stopped hoping. It belongs to humanity. The Eternal Fleet remained as a symbol, not an empire of chains, but a shield to protect the free. Humanity built a new alliance not with fear, but with trust. Freed colonies joined willingly, standing beside Earth as equals. Together they began to shape a galaxy where no council could betray again. And yet the memory of fire remained. Every star carried the story. Every world remembered the truth. That betrayal of Earth had awoken a storm no one could contain. Humanity had risen from the ashes stronger than ever before. The Council was gone. The galaxy was changed forever. And in the silence after the storm, a single truth echoed through the stars. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was forever,